All right, today's video is on microplastics, which I studied in college over 10 years ago, before it was a mainstream thing that was talked about, and really no one was researching it at that
Anyway, there's some
time.
good news in June that you might have.
Oh, this is good news, guy. I had to go find some good news because, like, it seems like news is always negative, and it's actually really uplifting. So I suggest looking for some good news channels.
Missed. Two teenagers won $50,000 for inventing a device that can filter microplastics from water. 17-year-olds Victoria O and Justin Huang from Texas have developed a device that uses ultrasonic sound waves to filter microplastics from water, winning them $50,000 at the Regeneron International Science and Engineering Fair. Their invention, which can remove up to 94% of microplastics in a single pass, aims to be scaled for use in water treatment plants, potentially addressing a significant environmental issue. Many existing filtration methods are inefficient or environmentally harmful, but O and Huang's device offers a promising and eco-friendly solution. The EU has passed the landmark nature restoration law.
Okay, cool. So, yeah, water treatment facilities, like, really couldn't remove microplastics because it's a really arduous task. Like, when I was testing for it, first off, no one was studying microplastics 10 years ago. It was like an undergrad project that I took on just intuitively. So there wasn't much data on how to even extract them or anything. And I created this thing that was these filters. They were like very fine micron filters. And I had to put it in the suction tube, the water sample that I had, and like press it with my hands. So it slowly went through this like sleeve or this filter that had grids on it, like 100 grids. And then I had to let it dry, and I had to use a magnifying glass to look at the grids, and I would count the plastics in like 10 of the 100 grids and then multiply that to figure out how many plastics were in that amount of water. And the plastics through the microscope were very clear. Like, they were like shiny red, wiry, kinky, like small. Most of them were fibers. Like, back then, at least 80% of them were fibers, or like bright greens or bright blues. And I found a statistic back then that, like, I forget exactly what it is now, but it's like thousands of microplastic fibers are removed from our plastic clothes, because like 80% of our clothes are made from plastic. So when we put a load through the washing machine, like thousands of plastic fibers, which are microplastics, come out, and that goes to your water treatment plant, which the wastewater, filters through all this stuff, but it doesn't take out microplastics, which is then sprinkled on our lawns, which lawns are stupid in the first place. And then that is washed with rainwater down the rivers and into the oceans, where then that little microplastic is uptaken by filter feeders, because it's like roughly the same size. And then those filter feeders are the bottom of the food chain, which then gets bioaccumulated up the food chain to larger and larger species. And then those are the species that we eat. And now microplastics are found in our brain tissue and our semen, like throughout our body and our blood. And finally, I think it's ironic and funny. It's just interesting. I don't know if it's funny, but that it's not until like a problem becomes like a really big problem before everyone's like, oh my god, microplastics, they're in our brains. It's like the delay in our research is interesting as humans, which I feel like it's the same on the individual level. It's not until like something is hurting us enough that we finally decide to make the necessary changes and adjustments in our own lives to live a life with less suffering. I feel like it's the same as a society. We have these harms, and it's not until they're there in the environment enough and we finally start researching them and we realize what they could be doing that we finally get to this point of suffering that we're like, oh my god, this is a big issue and we need to look at this and make the adjustments and shifts necessary to stop it from continuing to happen. Yeah, I don't know what else to say about that, except I think it's cool that I was one of the first people studying it, and I wrote a paper and did a presentation and had one of those like large posters made that was laminated and at my school for a while as you walk through the hallways. And in that, I found a tremendous amount of microplastic. What I mentioned is it's very noticeable, so it's like hard to be mistaken for another, like natural product. I just woke up and got excited with morning good news. So it's hard to be mistaken for anything else because it's just so plastic looking. And I would sample 1 liter of water from various places in the paper. And one of them is we took a boat out into the Tampa Bay in Florida. And this machine we had collected water samples going down in different. So we did the surface level and then like 10 feet down and then 20 feet down and then 30 feet down and 40 feet down. And then I got a sample of the sediment at the bottom too. And I found plastics in every single like sample I took, including I got a little bit curious and sampled our school, Eckerd College's water fountains where we drink as students. I like took a sample of there and found microplastics in the water that we're physically drinking over 10 years ago. I found water in the retention ponds. Those were the highest. In 1 liter, there'd be almost 300 pieces of plastic, microplastic. In 1 liter, like think of a 2 liter bottle of soda, half of that. In half of that, like 300 microplastics.